Is Penn State versus Oklahoma State the new college rivalry?
Well, what kind of prompted that question was the tweet from Carter Starachi, where it's and I got a little flack for not bringing this tweet up the last show. I didn't intentionally not talk about it. I literally just kind of forgot in all the other occurrences happening around the Oklahoma State move. But Carter tweeted, "I was offered a big payday. I said, go. I'm not gonna swear. I said, go wipe your hind parts with that money. When it comes to money, people switch like the weather, not me. Loyalty is everything. Nothing is built without trust. Penn State versus Oklahoma State in the football stadium. The national champs, 10 matches to 0. Carter Starachi, he's single-handedly trying to drive interest in the sport of wrestling. You think about the sport is dying for people to give them reasons to tune in, and really wrestling. The athletes outside of their performances don't go outside of that much, but Carter is doing plenty of work in that department. But were you guys surprised to see Carter kind of take that tactic against someone who'd been his teammate?
No,
of course not.
That was rhetorical. Not terribly surprising given how Carter tends to carry it.
But what was interesting was all the replies were. Well, there was another tweet Carter put out basically accusing him of not being loyal, right? And
that said loyalty.
Was that same tweet?
It had the word loyalty in it.
There was a lot of the replies were people like tweeting pictures of Cael Sanderson in his Iowa State uniform or like his coaches in their college uniforms to kind of show that there's precedent. Like people move colleges, it happens.
Also, this tweet came several days after he bragged about being the highest paid college wrestler. So,
shout out to Carter.
Didn't exactly tell the money to screw off.
Yeah, well, I don't want to talk about that. But to the original question, I do think this is going to be the number one rivalry in wrestling, if not immediately. I mean, let's put it this way. Regardless of it's a bloodbath or not, that's, for me, if I could say you get to watch one duel next year and make it happen, it's Penn State versus Oklahoma State. It's by a large margin.
Not even necessarily because it'll have the best matches.
Also, who isn't Penn State going to kill next year?
Yeah.
It's like, find a competitive duel. That's not going to be easy. They're way ahead of everyone. So just the tension, the rivalry that will be and what's going to be coming, we think in the next couple of years is going to be insane. But I think absolutely it's going to be. It may not be yet. I mean, there's Penn State versus Iowa is still like, when you look at the viewership and all the metrics, Iowa is still the. I mean, if you look, what's crazy, Iowa got 5th this year, right? And Penn State had debatably, maybe not debatably, the greatest team ever. And if you look at the ratings, it's still Iowa that is moving the needle in a bigger way.
Yeah.
Right? So you factor that in, it's like, well, in terms of interest, it's still probably Iowa versus, Penn State, or Iowa, even Oklahoma State now will be injected a new life.
There, like when Cael went to Penn State, he called it like a sleeping giant, right? But I feel like I was thinking about Oklahoma State, the success that they've had and like what they have been, it almost feels like a bigger sleeping giant as far as like fan base and like.
I don't think it's sleeping.
It's not even sleep. It's like it's taking a nap.
Yeah,
it's taking a nap, but it could be fully woken up.
Yeah, I mean, I think the where Oklahoma State is as a program versus where Penn State was when Cael took it over, very different. Whereas Penn State was just unrealized potential at that point in time that they made it happen. Versus Oklahoma State, the most traditional power with a lot of talent there. So they're very, very different situations for sure. But I think this rivalry, I mean, it's kind of interesting because Penn State is one of those programs that typically, and really Carter, maybe it's just Carter just sort of drives this, but they just kind of keep it all the talk, and there's tension and there's feelings, but it's kind of always been under wraps and below the surface. And now, do we see it become more above the? I mean, and now Aaron is sort of entered that with his. I think attacks are a strong word, but his, you can clearly tell that there's no love lost between Aaron Brooks and David Taylor at this point in time. So is that going to be more a norm, or are Carter and Aaron just outliers in how they carry it?
I think next year, they are outliers.
I do too.
A little bit. And I think next year you might get that verbal beef with Aaron and the tension of David Taylor versus his old home and his old school. But then you look 2 to 5, the farther you get removed from David Taylor leaving State College, the more it's just, these are the 2 best teams going at it.
Yeah.
And it's more of a power, large fan base versus large fan base and the 2 best teams going at each other. And Iowa versus a Penn State rivalry. There's no really ill will between Iowa and Penn State. They're just competitive. They're the two best, most popular teams. That's what this will become in 4 or 5 years, not, oh, I don't like you because you're a traitor.
I don't know. I mean, not traitor, but there is going to be something extra given the fact that Cael coached David and had Jimmy there and had Thomas Gilman. There's going to be whether the question is whether it gets above the surface or not. And the other dynamic here that we're not talking about is all right, we know how Penn State kind of generally carries it, right? Under the radar, below the surface, whatever. But we don't know how David's going to carry that. Is he going to feed into the rivalry and we want to beat Penn State, or is he going to kind of take his cues from how Cael kind of typically carried it?
And in his interview, the breakout interview we did with him, he mentioned that we asked him if he talked to Cael, and he said, yeah, it was tough, but he said that everyone at Penn State supported him and told him they didn't want him to leave, but they wanted him to make the best decision for himself. So I don't think it's from their end, from both ends, I think there's a lot of love. I don't think it's no love lost like we were talking about with David. And
I would assume Cael, he gets it.
Yeah.
He was in a similar position. He understands David wants to be a head coach somewhere, and that can't happen at Penn State while Cael Sanderson is the head coach.
But what happens when you're in the middle of a heated duel? What does Thomas Gilman do? Or what things get, when there's a call that goes the wrong way or something heated happens in a duel, a lot of everything goes out the window sometimes.
Well, we don't know what the Matt side demeanor is going to be for the David Taylor crew, right? And we know that Cael and company are generally very subdued. They really pick their spots. They're not going to be the greatest example is the previous Oklahoma State coaching staff is just the most erratic, all over the place, bombastic screaming at the ref, at this, at that, all over the place. So they're not going to be that. And Penn State's the antithesis of that. So how is David going to behave? I don't know. But I think right now, you can say no ill will. And for sure, no one wishes harm upon, they're not wishing harm upon David and the crew. But this is so different because this isn't a regular job. It's like you're not moving on to something. It's like you're moving to a thing where we're going after the exact same thing. And that's just not winning. We're going after the same athletes. We're trying to get the same athletes. You're trying to get the same RTC athletes in all likelihood. You're trying to get the same high school kids. You're trying to win dual meets. You're trying to win NCAA championships. And so anytime that happens, that tension is going to be there. And no love lost. I don't know. I'm sure deep down, and there's love there, but the top priority is winning, and that's their job and occupation. And Cael is the most victory focused. All he's trying to do is win and have the best team possible. And I think deep down he knows that David Taylor's going to be a real challenge for him. Now I still think you're a long way off from saying David Taylor's going to be able to beat Penn State. I'm not even close to there yet and I think I said this originally, the idea that there could be 2 transcendent level programs happening at the same time is really, for a sport, for that to happen, I think.
But I don't think anyone's expecting that to happen. I think people are just thinking
some people are.
You don't think people are expecting Oklahoma State to win national titles?
Yeah, I do, but I don't think. But I think the hope now is that instead of just one transcendent program, there's the playing field gets evened, and that maybe as a result of Oklahoma State entering the fold with David Taylor, some of these other programs will be able to compete as well.
Does it feel like this is happening at the perfect time? Cael just won by 100 points. It's just incomprehensible. Does it feel like maybe deep down I don't know if he'd ever admit it, but is this gonna be kind of like a little more fun potentially?
Would he get bored just doing the same thing year after? He's the ultimate competitor. He has said, "This is a game to me. I like winning. But I find this game fun. This is just a game." Did the game get harder now, and he views this as a new challenge that he gets excited about?
I disagree. I think that Cael, his challenge was not to win nationals. His challenge was to win 10 NCAA individual titles in one tournament.
Yeah.
I think that's what he wanted to do. He doesn't care about the other teams. I think Cael's goals are against himself. Like, how do I get my team to do X accomplishment? I don't think he's looking to beat other teams as much as he wants every single guy at the top of the podium.
Well, I saw Cael after Carter Strachey won his NCAA title and Aaron Brooks won his 4th NCAA title. And I saw him after Bo Nickel pinned Miles Martin in the greatest team race ever. And I could tell you which one he was more excited and exuberant in. It was in
That's fair.
the greatest team race ever.
But that's all because of, like, what's it called? Not context, but like the experience of a low helps you experience the high more. And so when you're worried about losing a national title and then in a split second you win it, of course you're going to be more excited. But I think if you talk to like long-term Cael, he's looking at the.
Can we get long-term Cael
on the show? If you're thinking about like if he's thinking long-term, like I'm sure he would maybe.
Yeah, you're right.
You experience more fun, like when you win that title. Obviously, like when I was watching Michigan play Alabama, we were talking about this yesterday. The Alabama game in the semifinals was more fun because they almost lost, but then the Washington game in the finals was boring because they crushed them. Yeah. But like I think overall, it was more fun being able to say they won a national title.
But it's like, do you want to? You say you want to beat your opponent at their best, right? Oh, I never want to beat the guy when he's hurt, right? But like when you've been there, done that so many times, do you want a new challenge, a worthy opponent?
So here's what
I don't think he wants it.
Now that I think,
I think he embraces it.
Now that I think about it more, it's like when you're winning by 100 points, you become and Penn State has become undeniable for the elite of the elite recruits. Like you cannot. This is. You can say what you want. I'm sure the coaches, they're not going to like me saying this, but like you can't take an honest inventory of your wrestling goals generally and say that Penn State's not the best place to go if you want to be the best of the best. Like there are examples of weight class group pockets that are better for certain institutions, but on the whole, if you're the best wrestler in the country and Penn State wants you, it's how do you say I could do better here when they're doing what they're doing right now? And that's not just because of last year. But when you are the runaway champions, it's more and more clear. And then when they're putting how many in the Olympic trials finals, because that's the ultimate goal. You want to be on the team and you want to be contending for that. It's such a hard pitch. So if that does become reduced in their ability to have a stranglehold, right now they have a stranglehold. If it's just like, if it's even slightly more tenuous, yeah, he probably wouldn't like that. But maybe deep down he would. I don't know.
I think, you can apply it to anything. Like, say you're playing a game of Monopoly with your friends. It's way more fun to go from, like, thinking you're about to lose to, like, oh, you made this last move and you won. It's more fun in that moment. But if I'm going into that game, I want to just crush everyone, no problem. Yeah. It's less of a rush, an adrenaline rush. But if you talk to Cael and what he wants, he definitely he just wants to win everything.
Think about this, though. You're protege. I brought you up. Oh, you think you're going to beat me? F you. No, I'm going to spank you again and again and again and again.
Did he say protege or prodigy?
He hybridized prodigy and protege.
That's right.
To protege.
Yeah, I mean, if Cael continues his dominance even like into the next 10, 15 years, then he's undeniable, right? He kind of already is.
He's undeniable.
But I think that it's tough. It's going to be tough on both of them because not only like I feel like you look at David Taylor, people think about how difficult of a decision it was for him to leave Penn State because he has M2, he has his family, he has K2, he has all these businesses, he has cows, whatever. He has all this stuff. His whole life is embedded in State College. It's hard to leave that, yes. But what I think the hardest thing to leave is acknowledging that none of your conversations with your mentor for the last 20 years are ever going to look the same ever again.
Yeah.
This guy is now not your friend anymore. I mean, maybe he is like spiritually your friend, but like this is a guy that is like both of you want to crush each other.
Yeah.
And that is just going to that's the toughest decision
Changes
for
the
sure.
relationship.
Yeah, that's
And
why he said he cried more than he ever has.
And you wonder how much is like, man, do I really want to go against this guy?
Yeah.
I mean, how much is that the hesitation too? It's like,
Right.
dude, I'm really going to sign up for a job where I have to beat Cael Sanderson to be the best. Like, I don't want that job.
Well,
Right?
I think that's why we haven't seen that happen yet.
Yeah.
I think we haven't seen it happen yet, and I don't think we would have seen it here unless David Taylor knew he had resources that were coming.
Yes.
He has reinforcements coming to Oklahoma State, and I think that's why these guys don't take normal jobs. Casey Cunningham doesn't want to take just any coaching job.
Yeah.
And now
Literally any.
and now it's like I think it's finally David thinks, all right, I've got at least the tools and the weapons to try to win this fight.
Yeah, and probably in David's mind, he probably didn't see the clear path, but deep down, he probably wants to be the head coach of Penn State, right?
Mm-hmm.
You kind of have to come to terms with that's not a reality anytime soon. And so he's probably had to confront that too in that whole process.
If you can get more resources at Oklahoma State,
Maybe
does
not.
that change things?
Yeah. Get that Paycom money.
Get that pretty Paycom money.
Yeah, it's pretty.
And a
fast.
similar kind of vein, this is a question we got from at Lil Spidey Boy.
Okay.
Kimball.
Do you guys think David will pull back the curtain on PSU's secrets or continue the practice of keeping everything sort of in-house in terms of specifics of what sets them apart?
So I think with this, deep down, it will give the appearance of transparency more so than Cael did, but in no way, shape, or form will we have, I think, a clear idea of what it is, how they do, how they train. Coach Taylor's first order of business was shutting down the room and closing it off and making sure, hey, this is the team, and the team practices in here, and is that to? I don't think that's to preserve secrets. I think that's more about, this is just for the team. It's not for anyone else to observe. But that being said, I think we're already getting a little bit more just by him acknowledging, hey, there's a system. Like Cael, I don't know if he's ever said, hey, we have a system here. But we all know that it kind of exists, right? And so I think maybe you get a little bit more. I mean, and David, we went to M2 and we were able to film a practice, and we already were like, man, they started a practice. I think David talked about this maybe on a show or something, but they started they didn't do any like games warm up, really any warm up at all. They started, all right, starting in on a high crotch, working on the finish, and then they worked backwards from a high crotch, and it was something I hadn't really seen before, and we talked about it. And but anyway, so he's more open in that way.
Going back to the talking about the system, because I think that was something all the coaches mentioned in their interviews. Jimmy, at least when I did the interview with Jimmy, he was like, yeah, first order business, like getting to know these kids, making sure that they know we care about them, figuring out what they're doing, and getting them on a system that they feel confident in.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, like you said, I mean, Penn State, what do they talk about? Like, have they ever acknowledged?
Well, they say, I don't know.
Fun and gratitude.
They kind of go a level higher, just like it's about, scoring points, having fun. But yeah, they never get into like any sort of specifics or whatever. But but if you think you're going to get a candid understanding of how Penn State trains, I don't think you're going to get.
You're not going to get a training plan.
But another thing I think you're hearing more and more is like it's not. There's not some special. They're not like holding crystals or something before practice or anything like crazy like that. I think if we did watch their practice, I don't think we'd be like, oh my gosh, our minds are blown. I don't think it's as different as we probably think either.